After battling some rough and raw weather across the North Atlantic Ocean, we have made landfall in a remote and rugged paradise. A mystical land where nature rules. It holds a history of transfixing sailors with its beauty, yet few have been able to stay. After a brief respite from the open ocean, our challenge is to see as much as we can of this remote island paradise before Mother Nature reasserts her power and forces us to leave.
We are Amy and Matt, and this is Florence, our home and safe haven upon the ocean. Together, we have sailed over 46,000 miles around the globe on a 7-year voyage of discovery, and now it's time to sail back to where this journey began.
Flores is the most western and arguably most spectacular island of the Azores. Yet it is an island that most sailors skip past. Those that do stop can only do so temporarily.
We were lucky to find space in the harbour and be allowed to stay for a few days, nestled against the wall with a small number of other sailors, many who had also just arrived from crossing the North Atlantic Ocean.
After weeks surrounded by nothing but ocean, we've been feasting on the sights, sounds and smells of Flores, the flower island.
There actually used to be a marina here, but it was totally destroyed during Hurricane Lorenzo. You can see the damage and the destruction that the waves caused to the original breakwater, and this whole harbour, all of the pontoons are now ripped apart and stacked up against the wall. And that was years ago, and there's still a ton of ongoing work. There's a huge project ongoing to rebuild the harbour, but also reinforce it and make it stronger and bigger than ever. And we're really lucky that we've been allowed to stay for a little while whilst all of that is happening. The project isn't actually due to be completed until 2025. It is so big. Luckily for us and all of the other boats that have arrived having crossed the Atlantic, there's still access to a hot shower, a laundry and even free Wi-Fi here. So it is an absolutely perfect place to have come into. The only real problem is that the harbour isn't sheltered from the east at all. So if the wind comes from that direction, then we have to move. We've really enjoyed getting out and seeing the area close to the port, but in order to see the best of Flores, you need to venture further into the centre of the island. And there's actually no car hire available close to the port. But we have been really lucky and we've been able to find somebody who was willing to lend us their car. So we've been able to get out and see views like this.
Flores, like the rest of the Azores, is volcanic in origin, and in the centre of the island there are a number of calderas, many of which now have lakes in the bottom. Spectacular views can be found all around this lush and jagged island, yet they often remain hidden.
We're We're at the bottom of the road up to the highest point on the island, but as you can see, we're already in the clouds. This is more like the standard view from all of the Azores at this time of year. It's currently June, which was the best time to sail across the North Atlantic, but it turns out that it's the month where they experience the most foggy conditions, so the cloud kind of clings to all of the islands at this time of year. But the times that it clears are absolutely spectacular, and I actually think it's still beautiful even in these conditions. It kind of allows you to focus on what's close by, whereas the rest of the time, the views, there's so much to take in. It's kind of overwhelming, especially after so long at sea. Also gives it like a mystical feeling, I think.
It's very peaceful up here in the clouds, just listening to the bird song. But I don't think we're going to gain anything by driving further up to the peak today. You definitely need to be here for a few days and make the most of the little glimpses of blue sky in between the clouds to see the peaks here.
In the hope that the cloud would clear later in the day, we descended back down to a point where we could see more. And well, wow!
There is certainly no shortage of water here on Flores. Everywhere we look, there are waterfalls cascading down the dense, foliage-covered cliffs. Even on land here, we find ourselves attracted back to the water.
We've come up to some more calderas at the top of the island with some lakes in the bottom of them. Absolutely beautiful, but it's quite cold today. I'm wishing that I'd packed some more clothes. And we can see that the highest peak on the island behind me is currently still in the clouds, so we'll have to try and save that one for another day. But we can walk around part of this lake, and the hiking trail actually goes all the way down to Faja Grande, which is the most western point in the island.
Hikes in the Azores are mostly linear rather than circular, which makes walking them in full difficult as public transport to return from the end is not very regular or reliable. So we are doing sections out and back to our car instead of the full one-way trip.
I don't think you could get much more different to our life over the last couple of months to what we're now experiencing here in the Azores. Back in Bermuda and the Bahamas, everything is flat, sandy beaches, and it's all about the variety of different blues and turquoises of the water there. And here in the Azores, you've got these stunning cliffs and hills, and it's all about the massive variety of greens. Everything is so wet and lush here, and it's an assault on the senses. Also, after so long at sea, just the smells of all the foliage and also the sound of all the bird song, it really seems exaggerated because we've been for so long without it.
That's one of the things that we really love, is the contrast that we can get from just sailing between different environments, to the point where my mum actually thinks that Florence should be called restless because we are constantly seeking change.
Since the peaks were still in cloud, we decided to drive up to the northern end of the island and explore closer to the coast there.
Tell how wet this island is. We've got a lovely sunny day today, but just the side of the road is covered in this moss, and it's just really soft, but also just got so much moisture in it, just you can wring it out, but it's really deep and lush.
Come to the northern end of the island, and we just got out of the car and spotted a hiking trail, and not very far along it we've come across this canyon, which is incredible. There's supposed to be loads of canyons across the island, but this is the first one that we've seen, and it's got this stone bridge across it, which is definitely not a good bridge for anybody with vertigo, because you just can put your feet right by the edge, and then it's I don't know how far the drop is down, but I like heights, and it even makes me feel a little nervous.
The clouds were too low for us to do the hike to the peak, the highest peak on the island that we wanted to do today. So we randomly drove up to the north end of the island, randomly saw a hiking trail on the map without knowing anything about it, and wandered along that hiking trail to find this. You just can't go wrong hiking around here. The whole place is stunningly beautiful. It is amazing. The water is crystal clear. My first thought was, we could bring Florence here, but it's so clear you can see down through the water, and you can see that the bottom is just a mass of boulders and rocks, which would be really difficult to get the anchor to set properly in, or if it did set, more likely to get it stuck and not be able to get it back up again or bend it. So sadly, not somewhere to bring Florence, but it is beautiful here.
Now for something a little different. We were invited to join our new friends in the harbour on a trip to an even less visited island. But rather than take Florence, we took a faster method of getting there.
This is a great way to see the coastline of Flores up close and personal, but with someone else worrying about where the rocks are. cool. Amazing waterfalls. There's so much water pouring off this island.
After our tour of the coast, we headed north to cross the 10 miles of open sea between Flores and the tiny island of Corvo, keeping our eyes open for anything we might find on the way. These birds were attacking a ball of fish on the surface, but below the water, we found the reason that ball of fish were being forced up from the depths.
Continuing on to Corvo, which has a population of just 400 people, we were hoping to see the main attraction, which is the view from the peak down into the 7 lakes of the caldera. But with the peak covered in cloud, we were not holding out much hope.
Of course, when we got here, the view was obscured by the cloud, but just as we were about to give up and descend back down to the boat, the cloud parted and allowed us a brief glimpse of this stunning natural landscape.
This is Faja Grande, and we're actually come to look at the anchorage here to see about maybe bringing Florence round, because the weather's about to change and we're going to get some easterly winds and an easterly swell. And where Florence is in the harbour at the moment, those easterly swells can come in and make it very uncomfortable at best and dangerous at worst. So it's best not to be there when there's an easterly swell, which means we've got two options. We can either sail on to Horta and get shelter there, which is 140 miles away, so an overnight sail, or we can bring Florence round this side of the island and anchor here in Faja Grande, where these cliffs will protect us from the easterly wind. And the other thing about it being an easterly or a northeasterly wind is it makes it slightly a tight angle for us to sail on to Horta, so we're not really sure which one we're going to do yet. We're just going to have a little look. One of the problems with the anchorage though is it's not a sand bottom, so we're not sure how good the holding's going to be, but with cliffs like that which protects from the wind, should be quite sheltered.
There are a lot of places called Faja something in the Azores. It simply means a flat area at the foot of a coastal cliff, caused by a landslide or a lava flow. So Faja Grande just means big flat area.
Despite falling in love with this island, next time we make the difficult decision to leave and sail on to Fayal and the port of Horta, which is famous in the sailing world.
Don't forget to subscribe to catch the next episode. We release a video every 2 weeks.
As always, we want to say a massive thank you to everyone who supports the making of these videos, and especially our star patrons.